There's a huge amount of inexperience in the Baltimore City State's Attorney's Office.
Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates holds training for his prosecutors, what some of the lessons will include and how long it could take to get the office upright. Plus, Bates' gun sentencing bill getting pushback from some calling it mass incarceration. Why, he says, they're mistaken. The rain sticking around, meteorologist Jasmine Lomax is timing out when the heaviest downpours roll in and when skies clear up.
I just am racked with guilt.
A former Maryland 529 employee says his warnings went ignored. Fox 45 News takes a deep dive into his side of the story on how he predicted the ongoing college fund freeze. The fight to reduce violent crime. What's dividing state lawmakers on the issue? And how crime in cities like Baltimore is putting President Biden at odds with his own party.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
For the first weekend of March. Good evening, I'm Kai Jackson. We are following that weather maker dumping sheets of rain across Maryland and much of the East Coast, in fact. It's not just rain, conditions cold enough to see snow in Carroll County and other parts of Maryland today. And we're not out of the woods just yet. Let's go right to meteorologist Jasmine Lomax.
Thanks, Kai. We are keeping track of that weather maker. We've got showers currently moving across the state. We're seeing areas of moderate to heavy rain indicated by those oranges and reds. If you have to drive anywhere, just make sure that you're adding extra time to your drive and plan for areas with heavy rain. This is part of a bigger system. Currently, we have a warm front that's moving across our state, but it's this cold front that will continue to drive across the state and could possibly lead to a few rumbles of thunder tonight. There is the chance for a little bit of inundation, possibly some ponding on roads with that heavy rain threat. But we do dry out tomorrow after the cold front passes. I'll let you know how the rest of the weekend shapes up, and I'll time out the rain in my full forecast. Back to you.
Thank you, Jasmine. And your up-to-the-minute forecast is available right at your fingertips. Download the free Weather Authority app. Use our powerful Doppler radar to follow storms to your street. Just search for WBFF in the App Store. Tonight, Fox 45 News continues to cover the violent crime crisis in Baltimore. We have team coverage as concerns over safety stretch from City Hall to Annapolis and all the way to the White House. We begin here in Baltimore City, where State's Attorney Ivan Bates has been at the forefront of Baltimore's crime fight, promising to crack down on violence from the moment the campaign began. But that's proving to be a tall task as his office deals with hurdles. Fox 45's Keith Daniels joins us with a closer look. Keith?
Well, Kai, the new state's attorney believes one of the things he needs now in that crime fight is what we're calling the Bates Boot Camp. In other words, training for his young prosecutors. Trying to bring it under control. The violent crime in Baltimore City, so far this year, 43 homicides and 84 non-fatal shootings as of Friday morning. A crime crisis fueled in part, says City State's Attorney Ivan Bates, by illegal guns gripped by criminals.
You know, this is just a time period when we actually have the opportunity to make real change.
Bates, part of the Maryland delegation on violence, meeting with lawmakers in Washington, D.C. this week. His push for legislation, one of his tools to help in the city's crime fight. But as Bates looks to lawmakers to help combat the crime crisis, he's also working to equip his frontline staff, in particular, newly employed prosecutors. Bates has kicked off what he calls much-needed training for his young district court attorneys. Training, according to a spokesman, that will include case preparations and a mock trial targeting the recovery of drugs.
There's a huge amount of inexperience in the Baltimore City State's Attorney's Office, and it's going to manifest.
Kirk Nachman is a former Baltimore City prosecutor, now a defense attorney. He knows about the challenges facing the prosecutor's office, which has a serious staffing shortage, and the new hires expected to get the job done.
It's going to manifest itself in individuals not knowing how to properly introduce evidence at trial. It's going to manifest itself in inexperience in plea negotiations and knowing and understanding what a reasonable plea offer is versus what isn't a reasonable plea offer.
In fact, the call for training comes after Bates admitted this week that a mistake was made by a, quote, young prosecutor in a repeat gun offender's case.
We should have filed enhanced penalties.
Instead, the prosecutor recommended a lighter sentence.
The offer was made before ever talking to a supervisor, didn't talk to the supervisor of the old administration. Once that offer was made, the defense attorney immediately accepted it. So we're bound legally to have to go ahead. Only thing we can do is learn from that mistake, which we have.
Well, we should note the judge in that case rejected that plea deal. Meantime, we're told prosecutors will attend a 3.5-hour training session each Friday afternoon for the rest of this month. We're live tonight. Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
All right, Keith, thank you. Questionable plea deals and sentences were brought into the spotlight by several high-profile repeat offense cases in the waning months of Marilyn Mosby's term. Last summer, Baltimore police say this man, Joseph Black, allegedly struck and dragged an officer with his car during an arrest. He has a rap sheet of convictions and sentences as well. Well, police say a 20-year-old Austin Davidson shot and killed a Wicomico County sheriff's deputy. He's under arrest for that crime. In the meantime, he was 17 and pled guilty to armed robbery, but was set free in 2020. Luther Trent is a convicted arsonist who told Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost he couldn't believe the light sentence he was getting after setting his ex-girlfriend's house on fire.
I was just charged with 18 different counts. That was dropped to 10, and then it was dropped to 1. When I shouldn't be out right now.
Do you think that you deserve to be out of jail?
Personally, yes. But on a principle note, no.
Federal prosecutors stepped in and secured a 12-year sentence before a state judge threw out the original plea deal. Luther Trent is now serving more than 20 years in prison. The push for stronger gun laws is making its way to Annapolis. A new bipartisan bill is trying to restrict where guns can be purchased in Maryland and how they're stored. Democrats are standing firm on a juvenile justice bill. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost looks into why plans seem to be stalling in the State House.
Creating safe communities is the tagline politicians in Annapolis have said all General Assembly session. But making that plan a reality doesn't seem to be simple.
There is not one piece of legislation that will change the state of creating real safety. It is a comprehensive approach that's necessary. Senate President Bill Ferguson, a Democrat from Baltimore City, says curbing the violent crime gripping his community and others across the state takes a comprehensive approach. We do have to hold people accountable, but we also have to prevent it. Democrats backing plans to restrict where guns can be brought in public, safe storage plans, registries for gun owners, and more mental health funding, as well as boosting services for juvenile criminals. We don't intervene now, we're going to have a serious problem. But Democrats not moving on a plan to repeal a law shielding 13-year-olds and younger from facing criminal charges, while Republicans push a much tougher on-crime agenda.
It can't wait.
Including the Violent Firearms Offender Act for the third time.
Right now, criminals in some jurisdictions are not fearing any consequences.
Good morning, everyone.
Friday, Fox 45 News pressing Ferguson on if his chamber will get on board with that GOP plan, too.
So is there appetite for that bill?
I think it's in consideration, something that I support. I think we're having conversations across both chambers about what might be feasible. There's a lot more work that has to go to make sure that we have real safe communities.
Not a clear yes or no.
Over half of the people currently incarcerated are there for committing violent crimes.
Zach Smith, a former federal prosecutor and criminal justice policy expert at the Heritage Foundation, says the Violent Firearms Offender Act could see real results in communities if it gets passed. And when it comes to this spike in more young people committing crimes,
many on the left have bought into this idea that juveniles should never be incarcerated.
Smith says he agrees with Democrats that early intervention is key, but says that does not mean jail time should be off the table.
If these individuals are incarcerated, are taken off the street for a period of time, they're not going to be back in their communities.
While Republicans are outnumbered some 2-1, political analyst John Deedy says the GOP's plans provide a chance for Democrats to create real change in their communities plagued by the violence.
As a Democrat, At some point, you have to show you're a little tough on crime.
With less than half the session left,
The clock is ticking.
Dede says Governor Wes Moore needs to take a stronger lead.
I think the governor needs to get off the stick and start being more vocal about what he wants.
So far, that hasn't exactly happened. While the debate continues in committee rooms, families continue to rush to emergency rooms after loved ones become gun violence statistics across Maryland.
Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Now, one juvenile crime bill is moving forward. The state unanimously approved legislation requiring law enforcement agencies to refer juvenile offenders to various programs. We're also told the GOP-backed plans about increasing penalties for stealing a gun may get through as other gun bills from Democrats move forward as well. And that brings us to our question of the day. Whose crime plans do you trust more to reduce the level of violence, Democrats or Republicans? So far, 75% of those who voted say Republicans. You can go to foxbaltimore.com/vote to weigh in. City State's Attorney Ivan Bates is taking exception to some criticism of his juvenile crime bill, which would raise maximum penalties for first-time gun offenders from 3 years to 5 years across the board.
There are a number of individuals, the academic, the scholars, so to speak. They're the ones who says mass incarceration. I think they're very confused about what mass incarceration is.
Fox 45's Alexa Ashwell is examining the mixed perspective on Bates's bill and hears from a political analyst on the history of mass incarceration. Her report coming up at 10:30. You can also make your voice heard. Scan the QR code on your screen to contact your local state delegates and senators. That will take you to our website where we've listed phone numbers and email addresses. A new proposal from Baltimore City Councilman Christopher Burnett would double fines for business owners who don't enforce a curfew during school hours up to $1,000. Almost 2 months ago, a student was killed and 4 others hurt in a shopping center near Edmondson Westside High School during school hours. Business owners and some lawmakers, even parents, feel the responsibility of keeping students out of businesses shouldn't fall on them.
You are not the one who have to take care of people outside of our stores.
I know as a parent and as a former teacher that we have to set limits and we have to have boundaries.
Yeah, the schools, I guess, could try as hard as they could to keep track of people.
Fox 45 News reached out to Baltimore police to track how many businesses have been fined for curfew violations in the past. So far, we have not heard back. Still ahead on Fox 45 News at 10 o'clock tonight. Thousands of Maryland 529 accounts still frozen. A whistleblower comes forward saying the warnings he gave the state for years before an interest calculation error. Some in Governor Wes Moore's own party signaled that they may push back on his plans to sunset funding for the Boost program in Maryland. We'll show you one lawmaker who says he supports it. And still ahead on Fox 45 News at 10, the big money cost of toll evasion in Maryland and creative ways drivers are apparently avoiding paying at those cashless locations.
Nobody likes a rat, but at the same time, 11 months to get your money out, that's unheard of. In my wildest dreams, I would have never imagined anything like this could happen.
New tonight, were red flags missed? A former Maryland 529 employee comes forward saying he warned officials about trouble on the horizon. Spencer Fells says that he spent more than a decade with the agency before resigning over moral conflicts. He's now weighing in as parents claim thousands of dollars were slashed from their college savings plans. Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor takes us through the shocking allegations.
Yeah, that former employee says he was hesitant to come forward, but after almost a full year of watching families struggle in their fight for these funds and answers, he said it was time to break his silence.
I just am racked with guilt that I was even a part of this organization for so long.
As a former Maryland 529 customer service representative who eventually rose to a managerial role, for 16 years, Spencer Fells was the friendly voice on the phone, assuring parents their investments were growing and their child's college funds secure. But now,
this ridiculous calculation is preposterous. I don't really have any other words.
He's changing his tune to sounding the alarms, calling the agency's new interest calculations corrupt.
I don't care how you explain the math to me. It is absolutely 100% shortchanging the account holders.
2 summers ago, Maryland 529 claiming it was flush with cash, so the state's college savings plan voting to change its calculations to give more money to account holders. That money seen in statements like these, until the agency took it all back, claiming it was a calculation error. Howard Gribov's account dropping from about $86,000 to $30,000, a total loss of more than $50,000.
I've had to tap into my savings. I'm also looking at my retirement funds.
And it's the same story for hundreds of others. For months now, Maryland 529 doubling down that the error was a simple math mistake and the new amount in parents' accounts is correct. But Fells says something's not adding up.
In anticipation of these 2021 changes, that I warned my then supervisor these changes would have a grave negative impact on the customers.
Warnings he claims went ignored.
I just morally could not be there another day, and that's pretty much when I resigned.
Fells left before the calculation error occurred, so while he's not sure the exact cause, he still says that he's certain the real reason behind it has yet to be revealed.
I'm not sure if it's a shortage of money or an issue that's way more serious than they're alluding to, but the facts that I'm looking at don't make sense.
Now, Fells maintains that he left on his own accord, but his position was on the brink of being dissolved, with the state agency preparing to move its management to a company out of state. Meanwhile, Maryland 529, in response to these allegations, only saying that they will not be commenting on personnel matters. Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
Since the legislative session started, 2 high-ranking members at Maryland 529 resigned. Board Chair Peter Sirigata stepped down last month. Shortly after, Jessica McCain, a member of the board's Audit and Governance Subcommittee, left halfway through her 4-year term. You can see all of our reporting on Maryland 529 on our website, foxbaltimore.com. A member of Maryland Governor Wes Moore's own party is pushing back on plans to phase out the Boost program. The program awards scholarships to low-income families who wouldn't otherwise be able to attend private school for their children or parochial schools. After a rally to keep the funding this week in Annapolis, Senate President Bill Ferguson, a Democrat, says he sees the benefits of the program.
Funding education and investing in young people, wherever they are, is a value for the Senate of Maryland and I think for the state overall. We believe that all young people deserve the opportunity to maximize their potential. And so this program, and this is a program that I personally have evolved on as I've seen families and young people really have incredible benefits. And in comparison to the $7.5 billion of state dollars, $8.5 billion if you include federal dollars, $8.5 billion to $10 million, it's a small differential.
The fight over Boost is heightened considering recent data from Baltimore City schools reveals more than 2,000 students tested at 23 schools were not proficient in math. Governor Moore says he wants state funding of public education to focus on public schools. Baltimore police say an investigation is underway after they found a camera hidden inside of a library bathroom. It happened at the Enoch Pratt Free Library on Harford Road in Northeast Baltimore. Someone using the library found the camera last week hanging from a ceiling of a gender-neutral bathroom. Anyone with information should call police. Howard County Police are looking into a suspicious death in Elkridge. Police responded to a home invasion near the Maryland International School around 10:30 this morning. They say they found a man dead with signs of trauma and a small fire. One person was taken into custody. The airport serving the Penn State University area is shut down. The threats tonight as students get ready to leave for spring break.
This week, more signs the labor market is starved for workers. I'm Atrell Nashar with what the data show about who isn't returning to work.
Currently, our next weather maker is moving across the state, leading to areas of rain. That's going to end late tonight, but tomorrow we're left with gusty winds. I'll let you know just how windy it gets and when we finally calm down coming up in my Weather Authority forecast.
The University Park Airport by Penn State University shut down after possible explosives are identified in a checked bag, and it forced evacuations and flights to the airport to divert. Bomb techs are trying to x-ray that bag that was tagged for a flight to Chicago. It happens as many students were heading out on spring break, and it's not clear when the airport will reopen. This is the second time a Pennsylvania airport was evacuated over a checked bag this week. A man was arrested after explosives were said to have been found in his bag at the Lehigh Valley Airport near Allentown, Pennsylvania, in northeastern PA. Taking a look right now at the Fox box on the top left, the White House announces that President Biden had a basal cell skin cancer lesion removed during his physical last month. His doctor says no further treatment is needed. On the top right, California Senator Dianne Feinstein, the longest-serving woman in Senate history, is in the hospital being treated for shingles. She expects to return to work, but with Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman being treated for depression, the makeup of the Senate is tied. On the bottom left, Amazon's second headquarters is on hold. With stage one of its campus in Arlington, Virginia, nearly complete, the company announced it will delay groundbreaking on phase two. Amazon promised 25,000 jobs, but that's in doubt. And on the bottom right, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is not a presidential candidate yet, but polling suggests he's a favorite in several 2024 GOP primary states, including California, Pennsylvania, Iowa, and New Hampshire. However, nationwide, Yahoo News and YouGov have the former president on pace to clinch the nomination. And that brings us to our question of the day. Who do you think should be the top challenger to President Biden in 2024? So far, 58% say Ron DeSantis. You can make your voice heard right now at foxbaltimore.com/vote. Just click on the Pulse tab to weigh in. Coming up at 10:30, the search is on for this silver car along the Eastern Shore. What police are saying about the person inside. And tax season is underway, and the IRS wants you to be aware of some changes coming. How online shopping is going under the microscope under new laws.
President Biden angers Democrats with a controversial stance on crime. I'm Scott Thuman in Washington to explain coming up.
We will not incarcerate our way out of this problem.
There are a number of individuals, the academic, the scholars, so to speak. They're the ones who say it's mass incarceration. I think they're very confused about what mass incarceration is.
Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates responding to criticism of his proposed gun bill, one that pins harsher penalties on gun offenders. The push for stronger gun bills even reaching the federal government, as next week Congress is set to vote on a controversial bill putting President Biden at odds with his own party. We have team coverage beginning with Chief Political Correspondent Scott Thuman and the president's decision to join with Republicans.
President Biden in a no-win situation, either look soft on crime or side with Republicans. He chose the latter.
And this is a president that believes in keeping communities safe. He believes in keeping the 700,000 residents in D.C. safe.
Biden sparking controversy when he announced he won't keep Congress from overruling the Washington, D.C. City Council, dominated by Democrats, and which recently passed a plan lowering the penalty for serious crimes like carjackings, burglaries, and robberies. At a time when they're spiking in the nation's capital, homicides up 37%, auto thefts 111%. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeting, "Plenty of places pass laws the president may disagree with. He should respect the people's government of D.C. just as he does elsewhere."
We've been hearing that some of the House Democrats feel like they got thrown under the bus a little bit by the president's decision.
Prompting headlines like, "Democrats blindsided, Biden bows to Republicans," and "Biden chose politics over principle." Crime proving to be a make-or-break issue for politicians.
That's the issue here. That's the issue. Should we be softer on crime, like Democrats want, or should we be tougher on crime, like Republicans and the American people want?
This week, Chicago, also struggling with safety, just voted to replace Mayor Lori Lightfoot. Before that, San Francisco recalled its supposedly soft-on-crime district attorney, and New York elected a former police captain as mayor. This Hill fight could preview the next 2 years, since Republicans now control the House and are likely to challenge Democrats and the administration as often as possible between now and Election Day 2024. And, as we just saw, put the president in a difficult position. On Capitol Hill, I'm Scott Thuman.
Now, Scott mentioned the mayoral election in Chicago, and people are wondering if there could be a similar result in Baltimore in 2024. Our Jeff Abel asked that question this week. His story is available on your YouTube page. Just search Fox Baltimore. Well, City State's Attorney Ivan Bates is pushing back on the use of the term mass incarceration to describe his crime policies. Bates sat down with Fox 45 News this morning, where he questioned some scholars' understanding of that term. Alexa Ashwell has the story.
The Baltimore City State's Attorney boldly said these scholars are confused as to what mass incarceration really is.
Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates discussing the latest pushback on his bill that would raise the maximum penalty for first-time illegal gun offenders from 3 years to 5 years. Current law sets that standard for someone between the ages of 18 to 20 years old, but not for someone who is 21 or older.
The amount of time individuals between 18 and 20 years old serve is 5 years. Right. Everybody else, 21 and above, they serve 3 years. Why is anyone pushing back to make something uniform? I don't understand. But, there are a number of individuals, the academic, the scholars, so to speak, they're the ones who say it's mass incarceration. I think they're very confused about what mass incarceration is.
Academic scholars like Heather Warnkin with the Criminal Justice Reform at the University of Baltimore Law School, who co-authored this op-ed in the Baltimore Banner in response to Bates's bill, and also spoke in opposition of it in Annapolis.
We will not incarcerate our way out of this problem.
But Bates argues this would not lead to mass incarceration, rather serve as another tool in his toolbox to fight crime. Political analyst John Deedy weighing in on the politics behind the term.
For a lot of political people on the left, mass incarceration always becomes a phrase of like saying, you just want to lock everybody up. You don't want to solve any problems.
As well as what mass incarceration is.
To me, mass incarceration goes back to the 1980s with the 3 strikes penalty, where basically it was a situation, okay, you've committed your 3rd crime, we're locking you up for life. I think in many ways the term mass incarceration gets an idea of we're going to lock anybody up for any minor thing that they're arrested no matter what. And I think that it's a term that in many ethnic minority communities, because their incarceration rates are a lot higher, it spooks those groups a lot more, and for probably very good reason. This gun measure, in my opinion, isn't creating a situation of mass incarceration. This is just increasing penalties for gun usage for a certain age range.
This legislation has already gained the support of some lawmakers, including Democratic State Senate President Bill Ferguson, who today again backed the bill. It's unclear when this legislation will be up for a committee vote. Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
3 teens arrested in Anne Arundel County and are accused of trying to rob a Dollar Tree store along Ritchie Highway in Glen Burnie. When police arrived, they were told the teens threatened people inside the store, but they didn't escape with any cash or merchandise. 2 of the teens are from Baltimore. A third, we understand, is from Essex. Maryland State Police are asking for help to identify a suspect wanted in connection with an armed robbery in Wicomico County. Police say the suspect was last seen driving this silver Hyundai Accent with a side mirror covered in tape. Anyone with information is asked to call state police. Disgraced South Carolina attorney Alec Murdoch will spend the rest of his life behind bars. He was given 2 life sentences in the deaths of his wife and son. The jury took 3 hours to reach a verdict yesterday. Murdoch's defense team maintains his innocence. The judge handed down that sentence and had a firm message for Murdoch, saying even if he denies his guilt publicly, he'll be haunted by his crimes.
And I know you have to see Paul and Maggie during the night times when you're attempting to go to sleep. I'm sure they come and visit you. I'm sure.
Well, observers traveled from around the country to hear the verdict, including Maggie Murdoch's college roommate, who says she's relieved Paul and Maggie finally have closure.
Maggie and Paul, especially Maggie, has not had a voice through a lot of this, and I just feel like things went according to God's plan, and the people here in the county that really saw what actually had happened and did not fall prey to the influence.
Well, if you've been following this case, you can also listen to our Sinclair sister station's award-winning podcast, The Murdoch Murders, Money and Mystery. It highlights the major developments in court. You can scan that QR code you see on your screen or search Murdoch anywhere you get your podcasts. Well, a bounce-back day on Wall Street. All major indices in the market are in the black. The Nasdaq took the biggest jump, up nearly 2% at today's closing bell. Economists are also urging people to keep an eye on new tax requirements starting this year, especially if you shop online. eBay and other online marketplaces will be required by the IRS to issue tax forms for any transactions over $600. The threshold had previously been $20,000. The rule doesn't go into effect until next tax season, but it still affects transactions you're making right now.
I completely sympathize. This is nothing that the companies wanted. This is nothing that the customers wanted. And my suggestion would be that if there's any frustration here, it should not be directed at the companies. It should be directed at your local congressman.
Well, sites like Ticketmaster already have tax verification in place. You'll be asked to put in a Social Security number before you're paid out for selling any tickets. Businesses across the country are still struggling to find workers. Weekly jobless claims fell for a 3rd week, but the cost of labor is going up. National correspondent Atra El-Nashar has the story.
Behind the now hiring signs across America's main streets or reduced business hours due to lack of staff is a question economists are trying to answer. Where are all the workers? From police departments like Asheville, North Carolina's.
We need 200, at least 200, to get back up to where full staffing is.
To this now closed restaurant in Omaha.
There just isn't anybody to hire. Nobody's applying. It was always hard, but now we just don't have anybody.
The labor force participation rate is 1 percentage point lower than it was before the pandemic. Using macroeconomic and direct deposit data, Bank of America estimates some 2 million workers should have rejoined the workforce, but haven't. Most are due to a wave of early retirements, but many of them are Gen Z or millennials.
I think that people are just thinking more seriously about what it is they're willing to accept from employment. And I do think as long as companies are really hurting for talent, people know that they can maybe sit it out a little bit and think about what they want.
The shortage, though, creates broader economic consequences. Federal Reserve officials consistently point to it as a headwind in their fight against inflation, which already poses the risk of triggering a recession. And the shortage could also pose risks for the implementation of major investments coming out of Washington, like those in the CHIPS and Science Act. This week, the Commerce Department announcing companies applying for some of the funding will have to provide accessible and affordable childcare. Without it, many parents are forced to stay home. But there's also a shortage of childcare workers. The hope is this will kickstart a solution for sidelined workers and not stall economic growth that depends on robust hiring. In Washington, I'm Atrel Nashar reporting.
The people who have a federal conviction for simple marijuana possession can now apply for a presidential pardon. To qualify, applicants must have been charged or convicted by October 6th of last year in federal court or D.C. court. The pardons don't apply to state convictions. Maryland is preparing to roll out legalized recreational marijuana July 1st, but state lawmakers haven't come to an agreement on regulations to legalize the sale of marijuana outside of medicinal purposes. Still ahead, trouble at the toll booth, and many states don't realize it's happening. A rise in toll dodgers and how this could cost you. An entire stash of drugs. Wait until you see what police say they found during a traffic stop in Hagerstown.
And right now it is cool and rainy across the state as we deal with the next weather maker. It'll clear. The rain will end tonight, but tomorrow we'll be dealing with breezy conditions. I'll let you know how high the winds get coming up in my Weather Authority forecast.
Severe weather moves across the country. On the left, heavy snow falling in California and preventing emergency crews from getting to a fire caused by a gas leak. On the right, high wind slammed the Midwest, taking off the roof of a church in Indiana. Now, the storm system has also spawned tornadoes. It has been quite a nuisance for folks across the country. Now, here in our area, it's been pretty gloomy all day and rainy. The question is,